to the last video's question. Is this okay? So question 26: Who did the English colonists war with for the 3 years after defeating the French in 1763 in the French and Indian War? French and Indian War happened in 1754, which is also the same year that Skippakitaki, the last Shawnee village in Kentucky, was wiped out and not seen anymore. The white apologists say it was abandoned. I say that it was massacred by the British, okay? And here's why I'm going to say it. Because it disappeared the same time that the French and Indian War started. So the English and the French are fighting, and then all of a sudden, you know, the whole village is gone. They just packed up and moved and left. The French are actually known to be fair traders. With the Native Americans, they weren't massacring and killing everybody. They would set up trading posts and, you know, exchange European goods for furs and, you know, animals and skins and different stuff, you know, whatever they had to trade. So after the French and Indian War, 1754 to 1763, what happened afterwards? So the French had lost. They was gone out of the mainland continent. They had no more presence in North America. That was in the Caribbean, but not in the mainland, in the continental part. So the French are gone. So who are the English colonists warring with after the French and Indian War? In fact, I almost feel like the French and Indian War should be extended to number 3 years because they forgot to include Pontiac's War. Once the French conceded, then you have the Native Americans that the British are fighting. And Pontiac's War happened for 3 years after the French and Indian War, 1763 to 1766. And it was fought by Pontiac, who was in Ottawa. And he also had lots of others. There was the Ojibwas, the Potawatomis, Hurons, Miamis, Weas, Kickapoos, Mascoutins, Piankeshaws, Delaware, Shawnees, Wyandots, Mingos, and Seneca. So these are natives primarily from the Ohio country, Illinois, and Great Lakes region. And a lot of these Native Americans are ones that can claim Kentucky being their homeland, right? The Potawatomis, the Ojibwas, the Ottawas, Miamis, the Wees, the Kickapoos, Piankeshaws, Delaware, Shawnees. I'm not sure about the Kickapoos, but the Piankeshaws, Delaware, Shawnees, Wyandots, Mingos. These are all native Kentuckians, okay? So the English were fighting the same people that could claim to be here at native Kentucky. So what happened to Skippakitaki? Well, the general trend of history is that the English colonists, these white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, are fascist, they're barbaric, they're brutal, they take people's land, they take other people's resources for themselves, they break treaties, and this is a continuity that we see all the way up until today, okay? So, yeah, Pontiac's War is the answer to question 26. They were warring with Pontiac and a bunch of Native Americans around the Ohio country, Illinois, and Great Lakes region. If you can name some of them, that's good. Not necessary, but Shawnees, Wyandots, Mingos, Delaware, Piankeshaw, Hurons, Miamis, Potawatomis, Ojibwas, Ottawas, Kickapoos, Weas, Mascoutins. Why did Lord Dunmore declare war on the Ohio Valley Native Americans in 1774? First battle of the American Revolution was the Battle of Point Pleasant, also called Lord Dunmore's War, and it had happened because you had Chief Johnny Logan in Ohio, near Steubenville, had his entire family slaughtered at Yellow Creek Massacre, and so he started having revenge killings. The Native Americans believed if one white person had killed somebody, a Native American that was close to them, then that Native American could go and kill a white person of equal, you know, proportion. So that's what Johnny Logan was doing. But Lord Dunmore and the English, they don't believe in proportionality. They believe in doing what they do to the Arawaks or the Pequot and just scorched earth policy and just total warfare and just genocide and wipe them out. Just wipe them out. That's all they give a shit about, the British, right? Lord Dunmore. This is Daniel Boone's king, right? He pledged allegiance to Lord Dunmore. Eventually, they throw Lord Dunmore out and Patrick Henry takes over Virginia. But Lord Dunmore declared war on the Ohio Valley Native Americans in 1774 because Johnny Logan was going around killing proportionally those who had killed his family. And so he declared war on all the Native Americans, wind up getting them to sign Cornstalk conceded, and they give up the rights to Kentucky, is what they try to say. Lord Dunmore's War by conquest, right? You can declare yourself king by right of conquest. Who are the first two white Frenchmen who traveled down the Mississippi River to its confluence with the Arkansas River in 1673? The date is important, 1673, because it's so early. They're also going to see a whole bunch of Shawnee Native Americans, but it was Father Jacques Marquette and Louis Joliet. So Louis Joliet and Father Jacques Marquette, some Frenchmen, two Frenchmen, traveled down the Mississippi River and wrote a bunch of stuff. And it sort of goes into question 29. What Native American tribe north of the Ohio River was described to Marquette and Joliet as having so great in numbers in one district, there are as many as 23 villages and 15 in another, quite near one another. So 23 villages, not 23 houses, 23 villages, and then 15 in another, 15 villages, 23 villages, 15 villages, and they're all close together. These are tons of what kind of tribe? It was the Shawnee. So Marquette and Joliet saw the Shawnee all across the Ohio River in 1673. Okay, so who relevant to Kentucky history gained his wealth by helping Pizarro's Spanish conquest of the Incan Empire in Peru? Hint, he was the first explorer, European explorer to set foot in Kentucky. That would be the Spanish explorer Hernando De Soto, which is remarkable. Hernando De Soto, with Pizarro, he could conquer the Incan empires, but De Soto and the Spanish were no match for the eastern woodland people. They basically kill most of his crew. He dies of a fever. They bury him supposedly in the Mississippi River, and then that's all we hear about Hernando De Soto. So, you know, with Pizarro, he was able to take over the entire Incan Empire. He was like one of the most famous people, richest, wealthiest people in Spain at the time. But his lust for finding more adventure and wealth and gold eventually done him in. And the De Soto expedition in America was a failure. Okay, so those are the answers to those questions. Now we have the Middle Fork Ogam Rock Shelter that I was talking about last time, right, with all these weird scratchings. So Ogam, the ancient Irish runic alphabet. So now we got Irish, we got Welsh, we got Irish, we got possibly Egyptian influences in Kentucky's natives, amongst Kentucky's natives. So Ogam, the ancient Irish runic alphabet, has been found on numerous artifacts in North America, notably in objects and stone carvings in Kentucky and in West Virginia. The Midwestern Epigraphic Society, a nonprofit organization, researches the ancient migrations of mankind to the Americas, especially pre-Columbian migrations to the Midwest. Studied one of the most important and curious ancient sites in Kentucky, the Middle Fork Ogam Rock Shelter in Breathitt County. So this is in Breathitt County, www.midwesternepigraphic.org. Having almost 600 Ogam strokes, the Middle Fork Ogam Rock Shelter site is probably one of the largest in Kentucky and perhaps the United States. After the discovery in the early 1990s by Mr. Michael Griffith, Breathitt County, Kentucky, and Dr. David Feldman of Lancaster, the leading amateur epigrapher in Kentucky, Dr. John Payne of Berea, became involved. Then D. Payne contacted the Midwestern Epigraphic Society in 2002 for the translator, Mr. Michel Gerald Boutelet of Laval, Quebec, to translate. In February 2003, Mr. Boutet reported his initial analysis of the Ogam site indicates the basic content concerns boundary markers, and the language appears to be Proto-Algonquin. So before it's an Algonquin language, it is Native American, and they're marking boundaries. Okay, in 2004, he announced that the site appears to be much older than he thought, and considerable more work is needed before the message can be completely clear. The rock shelter is located in the middle fork of the Kentucky River and is the kind favored by old world Celtic people, one with the large border at the entrance just under the overhanging rock roof and a nearby source of water, in this case a river. Both the boulder and the back wall of the shelter are covered with hundreds of Ogam grooves. Its relative isolation and accessibility from only the river has protected the shelter from most modern graffiti. Periodic flooding has camouflaged the shelter entrance with debris and covered the lower levels of the Ogam groves with protective layers of mud, and this made it hard to find once again in the fall 2002 for MES documentation. Required washing the rock surface to reveal the Ogam for tracing and photography. Every precaution was taken to preserve the site. Several stars appeared in the Ogam script, suggesting reference to those in the Kentucky night sky. If the translation does indicate astronomical references, site compass readings should be made to corroborate it. Natural circular depressions in the rock face seem to have been worked into the script, and several possibly man-made holes may prove significant. A geologist who recently completed a scientific study of the Kensington Runestone will now study this rock shelter to verify its antiquity. So how did Celtic runes end up in Kentucky hundreds of years before Columbus? Celtics. I've heard that they were actually Africans. Celtics. We celebrate the Halloween as a Celtic Halloween. There's another Celtic celebration, Imbolc. Like Groundhog's Day, springtime, right? There's a springtime festival where they would have like a bear that would actually come out, not a groundhog. But that was from the Celtics. And then Halloween was Samhain from the Celtics. So we get Halloween, we get sort of the Groundhog's Day from the Celtic religion or the Celtic peoples. Squire Boone Rock in the year 1770. Brothers Squire and Daniel Boone were part of an expedition together in the general Kentucky area, but split up and went their separate ways in the spring. Squire was trapezing across America in a north-south direction, heading down to North Carolina to load up on supplies, while Daniel progressed on a westerly route toward the falls of the Ohio in the area that would soon become Louisville. As legend has it, upon Squire's return to Kentucky, he carved his name in the year into a rock in the area that's presently between Berea and Big Hill near Pilot Knob. This is allegedly intended to communicate to Daniel that he was back in the area. Although its authenticity has been disputed by some, the prevailing consensus is that there's no reason to doubt the rock's validity. It's currently on display in Madison County Courtyard in Richmond. It remains one of the state's few prominent tributes to Squire, who in fact deserves every bit of the kudos and glory that have been bestowed upon Daniel, being just as courageous and trailblazing an American explorer as his more acclaimed brother. So Squire Boone wrote on a rock his name in the year 1770. But he misspelled in. His in is actually backwards. It's written the opposite way. So it almost is like some cute way, like saying Piscetti, right? Digging for ancient mysteries. Someone speaking about Louisville's great architectural details on rooftops said that if you wanted to get a taste of the city's past, you had to look up as you walked. Quite true and quite lovely stuff. But as we tend to keep our eyes pointed down, not up. Tom Waite says there's a world going on underground. Consider the cobblestones. In some areas of Louisville, you can still find cobblestones that date far back in our city's history. Watch for dark brown ones, not the later salmon-colored replacements, although there aren't as many of them as there used to be. In 2002, for example, a significant stretch of cobblestones was removed from 4th Street. You can still enjoy their old world charm in many places throughout the city. And keep your eye out for bricks with words on them. They're everywhere. In the good old days, brick manufacturers stamped each brick with their imprint. These imprints are rarely seen. They were on the sides, intended to be concealed in the mortar, but occasionally you could find the many older homes use imprinted bricks as makeshift cobblestones to pave a path or a driveway on the property. What's under these bricks and cobblestones? One of the great things about living in a truly old city is that there's so many opportunities to be an amateur urban archaeologist. If you live in the suburbs of a young town and start digging a hole in your yard, chances are you won't find much, maybe a Pepsi can, a plastic Pringles lid discarded by the construction workers who built your house. But in a place like Louisville, you can start digging anywhere, and you're likely to hit something interesting and old. After all, the ground is mostly old yards, hasn't been messed with in almost a century. Broken crockery shards from plates, teacups, and saucers circa 1920, 1960 are the most common thing to turn up in the dirt. Depression glass and milk glass fragments show up quite often, as do glitter and pieces of so-called carnival glass and Fire King's opaque green jadeite. Needless to say, don't dig on private property. Don't dig on public property such as parks. Stay away from any grounds that are known to be sacred to any culture. When we get to earlier strata of diggables, such as items from Native Americans, things get a little bit more complicated. Arrowheads are by far the most common item to show up in digs, especially on farmland that's been recently deep tilled. Deep tilled is terrible for the environment, but good for archaeologists. Ask permission, I repeat, ask permission before trespassing on someone's farm with a shovel. If you ignore this advice, don't come crying to me if someone blows your brains out with an SPR 94. Another warning, if you're in it for the money rather than the simple love of amateur archaeology, you're wasting your time. There are price guide books that list ridiculous prices for common arrowheads or total baloney, often made up out of whole cloth by collectors seeking to amplify the value of their own collections with a swoop of a pen. If you find more advanced Indian relics than mere arrowheads, halt forthwith and notify someone like the Filson Club, the Kentucky Geological Survey, Kentucky Paleontological Society, or a local professor. All Native American artifacts are protected by the Kentucky Antiquities Act, and it's best to check with an expert to make sure you aren't wrecking an important find. That's important. The Kentucky Antiquities Act will protect the antiquities that are found. You can't construct over, you know, these old digs. That's basically the first chapter of Weird Kentucky. So we have all these different ideas about, you know, these ancient mysteries that we have. Who are these people? Where did they come from? What happened to the Native Americans, right? So here's the next 5 questions for the next video. What year did Hernando De Soto come into Kentucky? What American river and its tributaries did Hernando De Soto claim for the Spanish crown? What Native American tribe did Hernando De Soto come in contact with when he came into Kentucky? And on May 21st, 1542, Hernando De Soto dies. What of and where was he buried? And true or false, a comet may have hit North America around 13,000 BP, causing a firestorm and transforming human life. So those are the 5 questions, and I guess I'll see you on the next video.